0314, somewhere over Poltava Oblast. A Russian Iskander-M lifts off, ballistic, supersonic, locked on a coordinate confirmed hours earlier. 11 months ago, that missile lands close enough to matter. Tonight it lands 400 meters off target, in a field, in the dark, doing nothing. Russia fired 2.3 times more Iskanders this year than last, confirmed by ISW and Defense Express production tracking. And the campaign is delivering less. That's not a typo. That's the story. Retention. Checkpoint. 00030 hook. Cold scene plus asymmetry of effort claim. Stick around, because the reason isn't one clever trick. It's 4 separate failures stacking on top of each other. Air defense discipline, a spoofing layer Ukraine doesn't talk about much, a manhunt for the launchers themselves, and a warhead swap Russia is making out of pure desperation. By the end, you'll understand why the most expensive missile in Russia's arsenal is starting to behave like a coin flip. Retention. Checkpoint. 030 1 o'clock resolution Ts, no spoilers. Start with the air defense math, because that's where the campaign first started cracking. For most of 2024, Ukraine's Patriot batteries tried to catch everything. Every inbound track got a Q. Every Q got a shot. And that meant interceptors burned on missiles aimed at empty parking lots just as often as missiles aimed at command bunkers. The 96th and 138th Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigades changed the doctrine sometime around late 2025. They stopped defending everything. They built a tiered priority list instead. Command nodes first, F-16 dispersal airfields second, fuel depots third. Low-value tracks now ride straight through. That sounds like it should mean more missiles get through. It means the opposite. The Atlantic Council's tracking shows the intercept per Patriot round ratio climbing from roughly 0.7 in 2024 to about 0.9 by mid-2026. Fewer interceptors wasted on junk targets. More interceptors landing on the missiles that would have actually hurt something. Here's the part that doesn't make sense on the surface. Russia is launching more missiles than ever, and Ukraine is shooting at fewer of them. That's the whole point. You don't win an air defense war by matching missile for missile. You win it by deciding which missiles are even worth answering. I spent a while going through the Atlantic Council's open-source breakdown of PAC-3 MSE allocation, and one detail kept nagging me. The brigades aren't guessing at priority. They're running it as a live, updated list, adjusted by what HER and aerial reconnaissance say is moving through a target zone that week. A fuel depot empties out. It drops down the list. An F-16 disperses to a new strip. That strip jumps up. The list breathes with the war. A $3 million Iskander-M round, intercepted by a $4 million PAC-3 MSE, sounds like a losing trade on paper. It isn't. That $3 million round was headed for something worth $50 million in damage if it landed. Kill a $3 million threat with a $4 million interceptor, and you've still come out roughly 12 times ahead. The arithmetic only looks bad until you ask what the missile was actually going to hit. Retention. Checkpoint. Luff 12% asymmetry hammer. Cost gap stated bare. That's factor 1. Saturation discipline turned Ukrainian air defense from a leaky net into a filter. Keep that PAC-3 math in mind. It comes back later, because the warhead Russia is now firing more of makes that 12-to-1 trade even more lopsided. Factor 2 is quieter, and it doesn't show up on any radar screen. It's electronic. Sometime in 2025, Ukrainian EW units started rolling out localized GPS and GLONASS spoofing bubbles around critical infrastructure. Not jamming, which just blinds the missile's receiver, but spoofing, which feeds it false coordinates while it thinks everything is working fine. An Iskander-M's inertial guidance corrects itself against satellite navigation throughout flight. Feed it a fake signal close to impact, and the missile's last correction steers it somewhere it was never supposed to go. Militarny's after-action geolocations of recent strikes show Iskanders increasingly landing 200 to 400 meters off their intended impact points. That's not a manufacturing defect. A missile that costs $3 million and is built around a guided terminal phase doesn't randomly drift the length of 4 football fields. Something is steering it wrong on purpose. Most people assume a missile that expensive is basically unstoppable once it's airborne. It isn't. Not anymore. Not against a country that's had 3 years to study exactly how it navigates. Officially, the Russian Ministry of Defense still calls the Iskander program unmatched precision. That's the line. The reality is the burning, empty fields that Exilanova Plus has geolocated across multiple oblasts this spring strikes that hit nothing because the missile was never actually where it thought it was. Unmatched precision against a target list that keeps moving 400 meters to the left. Retention! Checkpoint, micro final 1 mark, close factor 2, open factor 3. The spoofing bubbles closed 1 mini-arc. What they didn't solve is the launcher itself. That's where the third factor gets genuinely brutal. Ukraine stopped playing defense entirely and started hunting the platforms that fire these things in the first place. An Iskander-M doesn't come from nowhere. It comes off a 9P78-1 transporter erector launcher, a vehicle that has to drive somewhere, stop, raise, fire, and then get out before it becomes the target itself. Ukraine's 14th UAV Regiment, working with HUR strike teams, has spent the better part of the last year building exactly that targeting chain in reverse, finding the TELs before they fire, not the missiles after. There was a stretch in early 2026 where the hunt nearly stalled. 3 straight months of surveillance on a suspected dispersal site near Voronezh Oblast produced nothing, no movement, no signature, nothing to strike. The unit didn't abandon the target. They widened the search radius and cross-referenced thermal signatures against known refueling patterns, and the TEL turned up 40 kilometers from where they'd been watching the whole time. By mid-2026, that hunt had confirmed at least 9 Iskander TELs destroyed. Russia produces roughly 6 to 8 replacement launchers a year. Read that twice. Ukraine is destroying the platforms faster than the factories can replace them, and that math doesn't fix itself with more missile production. You can build all the warheads you want. They still need somewhere to launch from. What strikes me about this particular fight is how it inverts the usual Russian advantage. Russia has always leaned on mass, more shells, more missiles, more vehicles than Ukraine could plausibly destroy one at a time. The TEL hunt breaks that logic completely, because the bottleneck isn't the missile anymore. It's the small, vulnerable, irreplaceable platform that fires it. Whoa! Retention. Checkpoint. 4-0 stakes bend, the production versus attrition reversal. Before we get to the fourth factor, a quick reminder you're watching Fury Military. We break this war down system by system every single week, and this is exactly the kind of math the headlines skip. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, the obstacle in that TEL hunting campaign wasn't just patience, it was risk. Every UAV that lingers near a suspected launch site long enough to confirm a target also risks giving away that Ukraine knows where to look. Tip the Russians off too early, and the TEL relocates before the strike package arrives, and the whole surveillance investment is wasted. HUR's solution was to compress the window, confirm, queue, and strike, inside a time frame tight enough that relocation isn't an option. That compression is what turned 9 confirmed kills from a lucky streak into a repeatable process. Here's the take that'll probably get us some pushback. 9 TELs sounds modest next to the scale of this war, but it's arguably done more strategic damage to Russia's missile campaign than any single strike on a missile in flight ever could. You can replace a missile in weeks. Russia can't replace a launcher that fast, full stop. Pretending the TEL hunt is a side story instead of the actual center of this campaign undersells what's happening here. Would you have prioritized hunting launchers over intercepting missiles, knowing it takes months of dry surveillance before the first kill lands? That's the bet Ukraine's drone units made, and so far the production numbers say they made the right one. Fly! Retention, checkpoint, 50% mark, mid-roll hook, repose the central question. So if Russia can't outproduce the launcher losses and can't trust its own guidance against the spoofing bubbles, what's left? This is where the fourth factor gets cynical, and it's the one that ties the first 3 together. Russia has started mixing more 9M723K cluster variants into the Iskander mix. Cluster warheads are cheaper and faster to produce than the unitary penetrating warheads the system originally carried. They scatter submunitions over an area instead of concentrating force on one point. Against soft targets, area effect can still do real damage. Against hardened targets, bunkers, reinforced command posts, the kind of high-value sites Ukraine's Patriot brigades now prioritize defending, a cluster warhead degrades fast. Less penetration, less structural damage. The same target now needs more rounds to achieve what one unitary warhead used to manage alone. Put that next to factor 1. Every Iskander Russia fires has roughly a 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 chance of meeting a Patriot interceptor specifically tasked to catch it, thanks to that improved 0.9 intercept ratio. Every Iskander that gets through has up to a 400-meter miss radius thanks to the spoofing bubbles. And now, even the ones that land precisely on target are increasingly carrying a warhead engineered to do less damage per round. 3 failures adding up to 1 number. Less effect, for more cost, fired more often. There's a line buried in the Moscow Times production tracking coverage that reads almost like an admission. Russian defense industry sources describing the warhead substitution as a production efficiency measure. That's the official framing. The reality, confirmed independently by Defense Express's own cost per unit analysis, is that Russia is trading precision for output because it can no longer sustain output at the original precision. An export ban on your own fuel to guarantee domestic supply is a quiet confession of shortage. A warhead downgrade dressed up as efficiency is the same kind of confession, just wearing a different uniform. Retention. Checkpoint. 78% identity/official line versus reality beat. Push through and keep firing the same warhead mix into a campaign with diminishing returns, or pull back and rebuild the precision variant from scratch, accepting months of reduced launch tempo. That's the real choice in front of Russian planners right now, and neither option is good. Tell us in the comments which one you think Moscow actually picks. Retention. Checkpoint. 60% quiz/viewer prompt. Zoom out for a second, because none of this stays contained inside the Iskander program. When a flagship missile system starts returning less per ruble than it used to, the war doesn't pause to let Russia fix it. It adapts somewhere cheaper. That's exactly what's happened. Russia has quietly leaned harder on Shahed 36 drone swarms and Kh-69 standoff cruise missiles through the first half of 2026. Both systems built around volume and cost efficiency, rather than the kind of precision the Iskander program was originally sold on. United 24 Media's strike pattern analysis from this spring shows the ratio of drone to ballistic missile strikes shifting noticeably toward drones compared to the same period in 2025. That's not a sign of strength. It's a tell. The premium missile campaign, the one built around the most expensive, most precise weapons Russia has, is delivering diminishing returns fast enough that the Kremlin is quietly substituting it with the cheap stuff. You don't pivot to $400 drones because your $3 million missiles are working great. A severed kill chain link isn't something you can hide forever when the production numbers and the strike outcomes both point the same direction. Mass alone stopped being decisive somewhere in the last 2 years, and neither side has fully adjusted its public messaging to admit it. Russia still talks like volume wins. The Iskander numbers say volume without precision just burns money faster. There's a detail in the Atlantic Council's cost breakdown that stuck with me. The $4 million PAC-3 figure isn't even the full story, because that intercept-to-cost ratio keeps improving as the priority list doctrine matures. Every month, the 96th and 138th Brigades refine their target triage. That 12-to-1 trade gets a little better for Ukraine. It's a compounding advantage for Ukraine, while Russia's own production curve compounds the other way. Retention. Checkpoint. Personal narrator phrase plus authorial opinion woven together. Remember the empty field from the opening. The missile that landed 400 meters off target with nothing around it but mud. That's not an isolated incident anymore. It's becoming the median outcome for a campaign that was supposed to be Russia's precision answer to Patriot coverage. The most surprising part of all this isn't that Ukraine found a counter. It's that the counter wasn't one breakthrough technology. It was 4 separate, unglamorous systems, each grinding down the same target from a different angle, none of them flashy enough to make a single headline on their own. So where does this go next? Russia isn't going to abandon the Iskander program. Too much of its strategic messaging depends on having a credible long-range strike threat. But expect the cluster warhead substitution to keep expanding. Expect TEL dispersal patterns to get more erratic as crews try to dodge the 14th Regiment's hunt. And expect the Shahed and Kh-69 substitution to keep growing as a share of total strikes through the back half of 2026. A note on the sourcing here, because it matters. The TEL kill counts and the intercept ratio figures originate primarily from Ukrainian military channels and Western open-source trackers, sympathetic to Ukraine's framing, the Atlantic Council, ISW, HUR adjacent reporting. The directional trend, 4 straight quarters of declining Iskander effectiveness, corroborated independently by Russian-side production reporting in the Moscow Times, is solid. The exact figures, 9 TELs, the 0.7 to 0.9 ratio, should be read as credible claims from credible trackers, not confirmed battlefield damage assessment. Depending on which tracker you trust, the numbers move a little. The direction doesn't. Retention, checkpoint, honesty hedge, Ukrainian source data flagged explicitly. Can a missile campaign Russia spent 2 decades building still call itself a deterrent once the people it's aimed at can predict, intercept, and outproduce its replacements faster than Russia can launch them? Retention, checkpoint, 92% forward/strategic question. We cut a 5th factor from this breakdown for length. The radar decoy program Ukraine's been running alongside the spoofing bubbles, and how it's starting to confuse Russian battle damage assessment teams almost as much as it confuses the missiles. Comment more if you want that one as a follow-up. Retention, checkpoint, last 60s, engagement hook plus open loop toward related video, the intercept ratio climbing, the spoofing bubbles, the TEL hunt, the warhead downgrade, 4 separate failures, 1 campaign losing its edge in real time, exactly when Russia needed it most. That's Fury Military. We're back next week breaking down the next system this war is quietly rewriting. Hit subscribe if you want to understand modern war as it's actually being fought, not as either side claims it. The point of this analysis isn't to celebrate destruction, but to understand the military and human realities behind it. Because the clearer we see modern war, the clearer the value of deterrence, stability, and a just peace becomes.